Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning.
A podcast where we share with you great insights about everything family from over 30 years of parenting 7 kids and over a decade of equipping parents through our Crazy Cool Family ministry.
So let us inspire and equip you to build your best family.
Welcome. Hi, Sue. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you? Glad to be here.
We're going to talk about your favorite topic today.
Yeah. It is. If you didn't pick up on the sarcasm that
money.
Yeah, not my favorite topic.
We are going to talk about money. We're going to talk about we somehow survived. We've survived 35 years of marriage, 35 years of money.
How?
Finance is the worst topic for many marriages. And so,
yes.
And it was for us. We're going to go into a little history of, okay, I'm going to give you the overarching theme of the podcast. And it is how we came to our marriage with very different views of money. And over time, we have come together.
Yeah.
And really, money has become less and less of a source of contention in our marriage. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say we learned how to crazy cool communicate about our money. There's a CCC for you.
We the first 30 years were bad. The last 3 or 4 have been
really good.
But really,
I mean, the best is yet to come, right?
Yeah. So, first of all, let's talk about kind of where we came from. I am a CPA. And I have a master's in tax accounting and finances, numbers and all the things are something that's always been, something I've been interested in, as well as something that wasn't that difficult for me. And Suzanne, on the other hand.
I was about to say, can I talk about me?
Sure.
And so I am much more of a free spirit. I never balanced my checkbook before we got married.
Which was mind-blowing to me.
I was like, who's got time for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that just to kind of set the tone and the pace of where we were and how so far off we were on being unified in this, the first year we filed taxes, we paid taxes and didn't get any refund. And I said to my brilliant tax accountant, he has a master's in tax accounting, I said to him,
was working for the largest tax accounting firm in the world at the time, doing tax returns for, multi-wealthy individuals, generationally wealthy individuals. Yes.
Yeah. So you got the scene, right? It's painted for you, right? And I said to him, is once again showing how limited I knew and still know about money. I said to him, we should have had my dad do our taxes because he always gets me a return.
Gets me a refund, yes.
Gets me a refund.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that my dad maybe wasn't even on the up and up. I mean, I don't know, but I also didn't have any kind of income, and so I could see that. But anyway, and I just remember Don looking at me like, are you insane?
Who have I married?
And so I think that kind of set the tone of where we were. Don's coming in with all this expertise, good expertise. Maybe there was some arrogance with the expertise.
And also in a negative way. So from my end is Suzanne also came at it with, before I get to my piece of it, one more side note is that she was more of she said free spirit, and it also means that she really's never been, long-term planning is really not in her vision for money and everything.
Or anything. I am very present focused. If you sit in front of me, you have all my attention. Yeah. But if you want to plan something with me later.
But you've had a vision for your kids, and you had a vision for, really a lot of times you have a vision for relationships. And not necessarily money. Well, I was, thinking I'm a planner, I'm a dreamer, wanted to see wanted to make sure we were in order. The other thing is, I came into, especially early in our marriage, there was a lot of talk about budgets and needing to do budgets. And at the time we weren't making a lot of money. So it was, really needed to be budgeted. And so, but I was really, it's about, remember our big crazy cool word is communication.
Yeah.
And we misunderstood each other a lot because I interpreted her free spiritedness as you don't care. You don't care about that. I'm out there because she quickly, in a couple of years, had quit her work as a teacher, and so she was at home with her little girls. And the free spirit in me communicated, I don't care. I'm just going to do this, and I don't want a budget. I don't want all these restrictions. I just want to do what I want. On the other hand, my budgeting communicated what to you?
Well, it was crazy control, and it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't fair. Like maybe Don did come at it with an element of control, but I think if he had been married to a different person, they would have received it differently. But I watched my dad control my mom when it came to money. Like she had to drive to his office to get a check to go to the grocery store, and she had a certain amount of money, and her only passion in life was to cook, and that's all she wanted to do. I remember like having 1 liter of Dr. Pepper, for 2 weeks and 1 loaf of bread. I mean, and so to me, I mean, and once again, this is from a child's perspective. My mom and dad, they worked it, whatever their issue was, that was fine. But for me, what I saw was that my mom didn't get to spend the money that she wanted to spend to do the things that she wanted to do. And I was not going to let my husband do that to me. And so that's not at all the place where Don was coming from when it came to the money that we had to spend, but I interpreted every move that he made as control.
And regardless of who was at fault or not, and both of us were in so many ways and not in so many ways, but the communication wasn't there. And then, I interpreted that as she didn't care, and she was like, he's over controlling me. And so, wow, we really, and therefore.
So we'd have a conversation and we'd shut down. So we'd stop any kind of communication because we didn't want to fight.
And I also tried to put in, we were influenced by, say, Dave, it was even kind of, I don't know if it was Dave Ramsey or before, but really the budgeting envelope system, if you remember that.
I think that was all Dave. Hated the man for a while.
And we had the cash in the envelopes, and it really bugged Suzanne, and she would take from one envelope and put it in another.
Absolutely. If the children need shoes, then we're going to take from the fund, the insurance fund. Who cares about insurance?
I would go and open up envelopes and nothing would be there. And I'd be like, oh my goodness, what is happening?
So, and it's like, so how impractical. Did I need to take 12 envelopes with me? So we go to the cleaners, I pull out one, and we go get, groceries, I pull out another, and we go buy, anyway. And what if I'm at Target and I buy clothes and groceries? Do I need to pay out of 2 different envelopes? Anyway, it was way too much for my free spirit to manage.
So what happened? We didn't get a divorce, and today.
But we also don't use the envelope system either, because
true.
You were willing to create a system that I could not only survive but thrive under.
Well, and one of those things. So we did change systems, and that's one thing to think about is I think sometimes we get into, hey, this book says this, or this, my dad said this, or this is the way this happened, and so this is best. And so communication, are you having a conversation about it, trying to be creative to figure out what system worked?
And so the best place to start when it comes to communicating about money is the Bible. And so what does the Bible say about money? You've got a couple scriptures that we were talking about.
Well, I think first of all that the one that comes to mind immediately is, 1 Timothy 6:10, where it says, not that money is the root of all evil, but the love of money is the root of all evil. And I think that money brings control, money brings security, money brings freedom in so many ways. And so there's so many things that money does. Same thing with time. Money and time are the ones that but today we're talking about money. Maybe another day we'll talk about time. And also I think the love of money means that if we have money, we control our lives, or we have freedom in our lives, or whatever that is. And so being able to, so that's one thing the Bible says. It says, be careful of the love of money. Jesus says in Matthew, don't worry about what you eat and don't worry about what you wear. That God, and really that comes to where I think the shift came with us. There were 2 major shifts that we learned that I hope that everybody will get out of this podcast today. Oops, I just bumped the table. But and one of them is that that about, first of all, I think is the being willing to be generous with your money. And it starts with, we believe, the tithe. That, one of the things is that the first, God starts us out. He wants us to be generous. there's a scripture that talks about, is that he wants us to be generous from our heart. I can't remember what it is, but it's, just, he doesn't want us to give out of obligation, but he wants us to have a cheerful heart in giving. And that starts with, I think the reason God says, hey, give me your first, it honors God, but it also creates this feeling of generosity, that it's not all mine, that there's, when you can learn to give, when you're not when you don't let money control you, which the tithe starts that, I think, then it started us on a journey of saying, it's not all ours, God's going to provide. There's a generosity there, there's a release there. And so now we can be more free with our money. We don't have to be so controlling, and we started to talk about that more. And so that's one area that is just, it's really critical of, I think, of seeing, having loose hands with money.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, is let's talk about the tithe for just a second, and how there's so much release and control, or I guess lack of control, release of control when you do choose to tithe. And I remember early on in our church talking to a young couple, and the husband didn't tithe, and the wife felt bad about it, and so she would clean the church, and she would do everything. She would tithe with her time. And I just remember being really grateful that was not something that Don and I dealt with. That is one thing that we did communicate about, and we did agree on, that God would get the first part of our money. And from that, though, we have been completely and totally blessed. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're not tithing, or if your spouse doesn't think that tithing is a good thing, I just really encourage you to pray about it, to pray for your spouse's hearts to soften, but to communicate with your spouse. Let's revisit tithing again. Just because God doesn't need your money. I mean, we can talk about just tithing, the whole podcast would be about that. God doesn't need your money. We need to give God our money. We need to give God his money back to him for us, so that we can release it, so that the stronghold that money has on us is not strong anymore. It's not a hold on us anymore.
And one thing and we have, since then, we've always participated in the tithe. And then one of the things that we tell our children a lot, that I did not follow, but I recommend that people do, is also put back for savings. So, what I would call that. So if you were talking to me about what a young family should do, I would say kind of have a 10-10 rule, in that you have, 10% is a tithe, 10% goes into a long-term savings, and then live off the 80. And it's interesting to me that when you start to do that, and that's another thing, that God gets what's first. And so here's the deal. You give yourself first, and you give to God first. That's why we get up in the morning and do our quiet time, because we've got to give God the first fruits of our day. It's why we focus on our day first, because we want to have the best day possible. We also do that with money. We give God the first fruits, but then we also pay ourselves. And then we pay everybody else with what's left. Now, that's not easy to do. And I don't want you to, if you're not doing it right now, then it was very difficult. There were times we did it and didn't. I mean, not the tithe, but the savings part of things. But I would recommend, if you're, some of the things to communicate about is, how would we come up with a 10-10 rule in our house? And, highly recommend and it's easier to start if you're young.
Yeah.
What happened is we didn't really learn it until later. I already had a bunch of kids. It was very difficult to go back. And, but that's one thing to think about.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's talk about just some of the tension when it came to money in our family. And I think it started when we first got married. We both had a job, and so that was beautiful. And we'd rented a duplex, and so after a year, it was time for us to move out. And I found a picture in a magazine of a house, and it was like, this is a great house. Let's go look at it. And I remember in my pajamas and my slippers, we went to look at the house, and it was this big, in my mind, beautiful, gorgeous house. And we pulled up there and I'm like, we can afford this? You know, me having no idea. And Don's like, yeah, I mean, I think if we do this, this, and this. I mean, and so it was the house that we lived in for 10 years and we filled it up with children. And I remember living in it for the first 6 months and having no furniture, you know, in many of the rooms, you know. But that was part of the tension, because we always were just right within our reach of what the money we were making. So that delayed us from being able to save money. And so you've counseled our children, no, stay below your means so that you can have the funds to set aside.
But I think it brings up another great point is you can't spend. So we can't spend money on everything.
Right.
And so one of the things that we chose together as we were starting to build our financial communication between each other is we valued our house. And so therefore
we valued our home. Can I change that word?
Well, but we wanted, what I mean is by that is we wanted a house that was really, we had a big family. Our family was getting bigger and we didn't want to be.
But when we first moved into the first house, it was a very big house and we just had Molly and she would get lost. Well, but Mom, where are you? It was an upstairs, downstairs.
Because one of the things we did was we bought our second house.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It was only like, it was like an extra $10,000 or whatever to get, but it was also, we gave up because it was on a really small lot. And so it's a big house on a small lot, but we thought we might be having more children. And so I wanted to make sure that and so so one of the decisions we made together is that we valued the functionality of our house. And so we had a big house and then we grew into that.
But we didn't have a boat and we didn't have a beach house and we didn't have it. And we, limited our vacations for several years.
And we also didn't drive nice cars.
Yeah.
We drove, I mean, I finally today am driving a car I like. I mean, it's been, because I've always driven like a hand-me-down somewhere, because we wanted to invest in other things. So one of the discussions in the communication is what do we value spending money on?
Exactly.
And for example, we did value, especially later, we did value vacations. So we put aside money each month in order to have money to go on vacations because we valued that. So as
time together as a family.
And so one of the things to think about as couples as a couple is what do you value spending money on? It's a great conversation. You also mentioned a little while ago the idea of systems. I really think everybody needs some type of financial system. Now, we chose, for example, after my budgeting fiasco and the envelopes, I really decided, I felt really convicted that I was causing trouble in my marriage by being too rigid with our budgeting system. And so two things I decided, and I don't know that I recommend these, but I mean, I just want you to, they were great for me and they were great for us. Don't know that they're always great for everybody. The first one I think is, like what I did with Suzanne is, I said, okay, let me put some money into your account every month. And then you have freedom to spend that, but when it's out, it's out. And, we didn't get into a lot of that's another thing. Just if you can avoid it all, don't get into credit card debt. You even if you get those points, pay it off every month. Don't let it. Credit card debt is bad. It's just bad.
And so what would be a system or a plan to get out of credit card debt? I know that Dave Ramsey has a whole big plan, but what would be a...
Well, I think that, there's a whole deal. You just have to start not spending and paying down the cards, but you have high interest rate.
And so sacrificing and saying no and choosing and understanding, but seeing it as like a challenge or a game, like, okay, this is the goal is to get this paid off. That's the goal. And then when this one's paid off, then you can pay off that much more. And so, but
my point is that don't get into it at all.
Right. But let's say that we are. So don't get into it. Don't get into it. But let's say that we are. And so then knowing that we are, the best thing to do is to get out of it. And so a plan to get out of it, one payment at a time. You're going to have to sacrifice and say no to some things along the way. And I know to choose to say, okay, let's go out to dinner tonight. Oh, no, let's not. Let's take the money that we would have gone out to dinner and let's put it toward the credit card. And so being super practical with that. Let's do this or let's do that. And instead of just putting it on the credit card, taking it and paying.
But only if, if you agree on it. I mean, that's where the communication comes in.
Build it together.
And
good.
But if you can avoid the credit card, but what we did, my two things I was saying is that I decided to attack the income side of things. And so I really, wanted to make more money. So I spent time, literally looking at career options because I felt like, growing family that, if I had more money, then I could have more freedom and it would work. So, that, and that worked for us a lot because we did that, but, which limited, I chose to take off the shackles, if you will, and became more free, which really helped me to believe in the power of faith and that God would provide. And, we had some ups and downs. I mean, there were
like job changes and
starting businesses and everything else.
Kid after kid after kid. And
yes, exactly. But when I would counsel parents now, one, I love the 10-10, but after that, it's like, spend the money, don't be so, I believe that generosity with others and with ourselves. I mean, if you ask our kids, they just remember dad being generous. And they just, because me being generous and mom being generous as well, because they think of it as me, I think a little bit more because I made the money more and mom was at home, taking care of the kids. But how do you
building their childhood?
But how do you want,
which was financed by Don?
but how do you want your kids to remember you and remember money? Do you always want to remember having a bunch of fights about money?
Yes.
Do you want to remember that tension, or do you want them to remember that and how you do that is to do that with communication and agreements, because then when things go south, the bad guy is the agreement, not your spouse.
Yeah.
Hey, do you remember we agreed with that? We agreed that we were going to do that. Oh yeah.
Well, and that was one of the things that I think evolved over time, is that there was a mind shift change, and that there was a healthier perspective on money, and that the generosity came in more, but you kind of let it go a little bit, and you got the concept, I just need to make more money. And then for me, and I was like he would lay it out, and he would show me how much money that I had to spend, and I'm like, that's more than enough. That's more than enough money. I can stay within that. That's very generous. That's very good. And I even remember times that would happen, like when the kids started being teenagers, him shifting and giving more money, because teenager activities are way more expensive than kid activities. And so even being able to shift and change as the different seasons come along with the money that's going out the door. And I remember it wasn't until, honestly, I think when the boys got old enough, it's like it finally felt like there was a little bit of a release in the tightness of the money. And because the girls were out and a couple of them were married and they were off the payroll, and Don was just counting down the years to get each one of them off the payroll. And I just, the boys had a little bit of a different experience than the girls did in their teenage years, because the money wasn't quite as tight. And so I just want to encourage you, young parents out there that are counting your pennies, there's hope. And then once again, the best is yet to come. There is more opportunity, and time goes on, more money to be made.
And so more
bills to be paid off.
And so as we, start to land the plane on this podcast, one of the things is to think about a system and to communicate, and whoever's in the finance person, it doesn't have to be the guy always, but is probably trying to not make that system too rigid, but have something that fits everybody's personalities, and have discussions about it before it happens. So what happens is it comes back, and this happened to us even in the last 10 or 15 years. And I would get frustrated with it because we always had discussions after the money had been spent.
Right.
And now if it went under, we didn't have a discussion. But if it went over, I'd be like, oh my goodness, look at this credit card bill. My goodness, what's happened? And then it's too late. You got to pay for it. But the more you can have discussions. So what Suzanne and I have done now, and we, I would say, went through definitely a season of 15, 20 years where I just kind of covered things. I just figured it out because it was too much hassle to talk about.
Because I wasn't mature enough to handle it.
Well, I don't know about that. I just chose.
Mature, secure.
I don't know. I think I just chose to avoid the problem, and that cost us a lot of money, I think, because and because I didn't.
And connection and communication.
But I just chose to fight. Yeah, I did, and I just chose to not fight the battles for a long time. And then actually a series of events happened where I needed it. I had to figure it out, and so we actually hired a financial coach.
Yeah, I was about to say the exact same thing. Is we got a mediator that basically could come in and say, Suzanne, you're doing a great job, and all right, Don, what do you want to do now? And so it's actually been a beautiful thing for us to be able to have somebody come in that's on common ground and help us communicate so that it's not heightened. And it's not anymore. Like, I love our talks. I love our call now that we meet with them. I love seeing what our budget is. I love, challenging myself to come in under budget and, to hear everybody say, good job,
And so, gosh, it feels like we bounced around a lot, but I think I want to, just summarize with communicate, build your system together, try to do as much as you can on the front end to see what you're spending so you don't have those dramatic arguments on the back end. And, particularly husbands, and this applies to marriage in general, is many times Christian husbands, I think, and I did this, and it was not helpful to our marriage. I mean, it helped in some ways. It avoided fights, but I just acquiesced to the problem and went and solved it.
Yeah.
And so, but instead, what happened over the last 5 years or so is I stepped into the problem. And at first, it wasn't as pretty as it could be. We had our own, but after I stepped in and we started to heal from that and we actually got that coach and everything else. We're better financially. We're communicate better financially than we ever have. But it's been over the 35 years, some ups and downs and some roads. So if you're going through those struggles right now, you're not alone, and you're not the only one that struggles with finances. But it's part of marriage, and it's something that if you sit down and do it, it's going to pay great dividends. And just trying to learn to build the system and also to be generous. To start with generosity and let God show you what he can do.
And so a beautiful thing that has come out of Don and I's dysfunction, our 20-something, 30-something years of dysfunction, is that all of our married children do their finances with their spouses. They all work together. They all make a plan. They save the money to buy the thing. They've got their budgets and all that stuff. And some of our daughters are on our content team, and they wrote a deep dive on money. And it's absolutely amazing. They talk about some of the lies that we believe on money. They talk about budgeting and debt and giving and saving. They've got some budget planning sheets in there. And then they wrap it up with how to include your kids in budgeting. And we'll talk about that on another podcast, what to do with money and your kids and how to give them that responsibility. And so I hope that you are more like our kids and less like us. I hope that you are working together with your spouse, because the reality is the enemy is alive and well, and he's going to use any doorway he can to get in to bring division in your marriage. And for us, it was money. I mean, that's where he came in, and we were not on the same page for a couple decades when it came to money. Did we get along? Yeah. Did we fight? No. Did we have a great marriage? Yes. Were we parenting together? Yes. But when it came to money, there was not communication. There was contention
at the level that we would love that we have it now, and how we can recommend that you do it as soon as possible.
Yes, stand on our shoulders. Be like our kids, not like us.
Don't repeat our mistake. But we can, even though we've made a lot of mistakes, we can still give you guidance because we've seen what works and doesn't work, and we're seeing it happen in our kids now. So money. Go get the deep dive and go be crazy. crazycoolfamily.com.